Welcome to another episode of Monica Mentors. I am your host, author Monica Martin Fletcher, and I am so excited that you took your time to join me for this episode. I do not take it lightly that you guys watch the show, that you share it, that you give your comments. I am so appreciative. I've noticed a lot of you guys have given me so much feedback on the episodes that I did relating to my conversation about domestic abuse. There was a lot of conversation about the show that I did on sexual urges. And that's what encouraged me and led me to what we're going to talk about today. Today, we're going to talk about boundaries. And specifically, we're going to talk about setting boundaries as it relates to friendships and dating relationships for our teams. So today I want you to join me for another episode as we talk about how to set clear boundaries, which can lead to a stronger connection with parent to child, teens to their friends, and even to their peers. We're going to talk about how to establish a mutual understanding in both friendships and on the dating scene. So, the first thing I feel like we need to talk about, what exactly is a boundary? There were so many definitions that I looked up that I wasn't quite sure of which one was the best fit for this conversation. And so I decided to talk about boundaries from my perspective as a mentor. One of the things that's so important is we have to understand that boundaries is no different than establishing your personal space. A boundary, think about a line. If someone crosses a line, like let's say you draw a line in the sand, and you get to decide, you're on one side of the sand, there's people on the other side. You get to decide where your comfort level is as far as individuals coming across that line or staying on the other side of that line. I feel like that's a simple way to give a definition for boundaries is, and also an effective way to think about it is, what makes you click? What makes you tick? What bothers you? What can someone say to you or do to you that makes you angry or upsets you or make you feel like your personal space has been invaded? One of the things that I don't want any of us to ever take lightly is establishing boundaries, especially for our teens. I know that a lot of us grew up where, our parents and our grandparents and aunts and uncles and even cousins and mentors, our youth leaders, we were raised in the thinking of, don't listen, if you won't do it to yourself, don't let anybody else do it to you. If your parents, one thing me and my best friend always talk about is how our dads, they spoke to us a certain way. So we were determined not to get in relationships or even establish mutual friendships and let people talk to us the way that, not talk to us the way that our dads talk to us or vice versa. And so you got to you might have to, like one of the things I had to do as I was preparing for this show, I had to write down what are some of the things that I considered as a boundary. I'm dressed today as a Falcons fan. Everybody who knows me knows that I'm a Falcons fan. So one of the things that I don't allow, don't cross my boundary and talk to me about another team. Don't come to me and tell me how many times the Falcons has lost. Don't come to me telling me what they woulda, shoulda, coulda. I'm not going to listen to it because I have established that my boundary line is I am a Falcons fan. I wanted to use something simple because I wanted it to feel like setting boundaries is not complicated. You may have something along the line of there's certain, don't touch my food, a joke my sister and my older cousin used to tell when we were younger is I was the one, I would save all my food to the end and they would eat theirs up real fast. And then I would sit there and then I would like eat my food real slow because I knew they wanted some. But I bet you neither one of them better cross that line and tried to come and get some of my food. Boundaries can be just that simple. It is whatever makes you feel uncomfortable, whether it be conversation, whether it be a picture, whatever it is, establish what makes you feel like something that you don't want someone else to do to make you angry or upset. Okay? So think about it from that standpoint. And then we want to talk about what are some common misconceptions about boundaries. I think probably the most probably one I can think of that pops in my mind the first is people assuming that other people don't have boundaries, or they try to make you feel like having a boundary or not having a boundary shouldn't be a big deal. I think another thing that people make the mistake of doing is not taking the time to understand that you have boundaries. We recently were having some conversation with some of my friends when we were thinking about where we're heading in the next 4 years in our country. And we were having some conversations about, okay, let me tell you now, you may feel this way, but don't cross the line and bring that to me. If your political belief, if you believe this or believe that, don't assume you can step in my space and think it's okay to bring that conversation to me because I might cut you down because they have crossed my boundary about what they believe. Another boundary that I don't really let people cross when it comes to establishing relationship with me, friendships with me, my belief. You don't have to believe that I believe in God, and you don't, but it's okay. I'm not going to stop believing in him because you don't. But at the same time, with all due respect, I'm not going to try to beat you over the head and make you support my boundary because it's what I believe for myself. You'll figure it out. You do it your way, I'll do it my way, and we can meet somewhere in the middle. Remember I talked about that line. And there are so many of us who don't take the time, I believe, to establish boundaries. I feel like sometimes that's why so many of us who are mad in the world. And you angry at folks for no reason when they didn't even know that was your boundary. Now, I've heard some people call it pressure points. I've heard some people say, I'm just sensitive in that area. That's a boundary. It's okay to call it that, and it's okay if you choose to establish that, but you have to be a clear communicator of what your boundaries are, especially when, as a teen, when you're starting to date and when you are starting to establish friendships. I think one of the worst things that a lot of us do as it relates to peer pressure and boundaries. There are a lot of things that, we were raised under that that you shouldn't do, but because you may want to have friends or, you may want to be that popular person on the scene or in the community, so to speak, you will support someone else's what's perceived as a boundary to have friends. And that's not a good thing to do because what will happen is it'll start making you feel uncomfortable. And other people will be able to see that you're not necessarily in a space that you should really be in. And so that's pivotal as well. Establish those boundaries, young people, but then understand that other individuals' boundaries does not necessarily have to be something that you have to support just because you want to be in relationship or want to be known in your classrooms, on your cheerleading team, football team, some things just don't have to be. And you can set boundaries and not look crazy. Who cares if you have to be one of one? I don't even know why that's not popular anymore. I mean, it's okay if you are in a space that you don't want to be around, something that makes you feel uncomfortable. But, it's a choice. And like my mom always says, it always boils down to a choice. And so that's why I thought this was so important for us to address how to deal with some of those misperceptions. Again, you guys are going to always hear me encourage you to talk to another adult My first preference is your parents if you have a mutual relationship with them. I'm going to always encourage you to talk to your church leaders, your community leaders. There are boys and girls clubs that you can reach out and speak to individuals. But I'm going to always encourage you to speak to someone to help you overcome misperceptions that are out there about anything that's relating to what you're dealing with on the teen scene and on the college scene. And so make sure, again, understanding that the misconceptions are out there about how to establish a boundary, but at the same time, understanding that there are tools and resources available to you that I just mentioned that can help you clear up some of those misconceptions. How do we as a culture or society influence our understanding of boundaries? I feel like I just explained that. You can be around your friends, watching television, whether it be dance shows, reality TVs, whatever it is. There are some things that can establish a boundary for you that you didn't even realize was important to you. You know what? That's a way to look at it. A boundary is what's important to you, what feels right to you. Not necessarily what feels best, but what feels right. What makes you uncomfortable? What makes you tick? What do your emotions, how do they shift when that boundary is either disrespected or honored? Someone may honor your boundaries. How does that make you feel? You may want to remember that particular feeling. So if you're in a relationship or establishing a friendship with other people, then those are some triggers. That's that word I like to use, triggers. You want to look for your triggers when you're establishing boundaries. And you always can go back to your feeling. How did that make you feel? You can pray about it, especially when it comes to someone crossing a boundary and you feel like you are tapping into anger. Go pray. Listen, prayer is not deep, y'all. Just say, Lord, let me tell you something. This is me. This is Monica. This is Monica Mentors. If somebody crosses my boundary, I'm like, now, Lord, now look. Now, I'm about to go off. So I need you to help me. Check me. Try my heart. Try my mind. See what's going on in me that's not like me before I knock them out or before I cut them off. That was my little thing. If you cross my boundary back in the day, I just cut people off because I didn't have time for it. But that's not always the best way to be, because it never fails. You're going to always have somebody that comes back possibly to show you that you still haven't dealt with that particular boundary that someone triggered for you. So every lesson on boundary is a very important lesson because it helps you to mature yourself, and it helps you to maintain a space of peace, and it helps you to understand what's important as you go from teen to adulthood, because the worst thing in the world you want to do is not deal with establishing those boundaries, and then you become adult and don't nobody want to be around you. Or you try to establish your family members. Nobody wants to be around you because you're always in this space where you're triggered by things that you never took the time as a teen to identify as a healthy or an unhealthy boundary. So we definitely want to make sure that we deal with that now so that it won't progress into the future with us. All right. And then what we want to do is, so as far as our culture, explore those things. There are some people, they only want to deal with people in their own community because there are some things in our community we just know. Like, don't ask me for no food on my plate, like I mentioned earlier. There are certain movies, certain music, culturally we listen to. I'm not necessarily a country fan. I know a lot of y'all have, that's going across my boundary. I'm from the South, but I'm not necessarily a country music fan. You got to know so even though society shifted where a lot of us were going to country music as an example because of certain artists who crossed over, that wasn't necessarily for me. I didn't get mad at the individuals who crossed over, but that was a society norm that changed, that didn't change my boundaries personally as far as how I feel about certain music genres. So think about it from that way. What are some things that, I know a lot of people that swear by certain things they watch on television. I don't necessarily have to watch television, give or take. But I don't knock them. If I know somebody, I know someone right now to this day, y'all, they look at television all day long. I can't sleep with the television on because that gets in my thoughts, and I'm dealing with people all day long. And so I like to have clear thoughts, clear mind. I don't want it, but I don't knock the other person because that's what's important to them. I just simply say my boundary is I can't listen and I can't watch that all day long because it makes it hard for me to have clear thinking, clear focus. And so we come to a median. So sometimes if I have friends that I know that do that, I don't go over their house during certain times because I know they're going to be watching TV a lot. I don't want to. Certain shows I don't want to watch. It don't make me a bad person. It's just scary movies. Prime example. You are not going to pay me to watch a scary movie. I'll watch the movie with you, and as soon as that music started to change, I'm covering my eyes or I'm leaving the room. The people who love me and know me, they never ask me to cross my boundary about forcing me to watch the scary movie. They just don't. Those who have, I shut them down. Those who crack me, I shut them off. I don't even pay them no attention. But I did not change my boundary because of the way people felt about the one that I set for myself. And I wanted to make the conversation just that simple, y'all, to show you just how easy it is to cut off or continue with individuals in a friendship and a dating relationship as it relates to things that's personal and important to you. Now, don't be nasty. Let me say that. Because sometimes, y'all, we just done shifted from this thing where, we don't do nothing in love anymore. Some of y'all just nasty and mean. That might be your boundary, but don't bring it to me. But it's okay. So if it's important to you, but you don't have to be nasty or forceful to people about it to say, listen, that's not my space. Or you can do like some people I know, you give a disclaimer. Listen, this is who I am. This is how, my bad ahead of time if I make you feel some kind of way. But this is what's important to me. There is nothing wrong with doing that. And I actually appreciate and applaud people who tell me up front what their boundaries is versus someone who doesn't tell me and then I cross the line and then we had an unnecessary falling out. So from a cultural or a societal point, in establishing, there are going to be some barriers. There are going to be some things, people that you physically can't touch, feel, see, but they still affect your boundaries when you're coming in relation to other people that you do see on a day-to-day basis. Try to figure out how to narrow the scope so you won't offend someone unnecessarily, but you'll still understand the importance of communicating your particular boundaries without you coming off like a jerk. Okay, that was just my little side note. Now, what are some effective ways that you can use to communicate relationship boundaries clearly and respectfully? One of the things that to this day I still can't convince my husband of, I don't know why. He genuinely thought that I wasn't a real sports fan. Now, I contributed to some of this, to be honest with you, because I didn't make it clear that sports for me was strictly just football, because I used to watch it with my dad, and some college ball. So when I said I love sports, my husband was under the impression like that meant all sports. So then when we were dating and, he would have it on something, I'd be like, oh my God, we looking at this again? And so his comeback to me was, I thought you said you liked sports. So in his mind, he thought, I was faking the front because he had already established a boundary with me in our relationship that he was a sports fan. But I did not reinforce or explain my boundary to him that it was only certain sports that I like. And so, y'all, we used to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth till I finally said, wait, hold up. I said, I just realized I owe you an apology because I never told you I don't like all sports. I just like these sports. And then that changed the whole narrative for me and him. So it got to the point where when he was, watching things that I didn't necessarily want to see, I would go to another room and watch movies. But then now that he understood the sports that I do enjoy, then he'd be like, okay, so we meeting on the sofa at X round table to watch the Falcons or watch this and watch that. I'm all in. So we both had separate boundaries in our relationship, but we both also learned while we were dating that we didn't take the time to narrow and communicate correctly what our boundaries included. And so that's one of the most important tips that I want to leave you with in this particular topic is I want you to make sure that you communicate effectively. Do not get past a certain time in your friendship or your relationship and not communicate effectively, because it does cause a lot of confusion. And it causes unnecessary arguments sometimes. Thankfully, my husband and I were friends first. So neither one of us took it personal. As a matter of fact, we turned it into a joke. But a lot of people don't have that same energy. And a lot of people don't have the, I'm not looking for the word know-how, but a lot of people don't quite know how to not take it personal. So communicating your boundaries effectively in the beginning, I think, is so important to determine if there will be an ongoing friendship or an ongoing dating relationship. Now we want to talk about, how do you respond when your boundaries are not respected? Okay, now y'all can't go to blows, okay? See, let me tell you, some of us women, especially us as women, our mouths get us in so much trouble. We don't necessarily, our mouth sometimes can be our fist, and our attitudes can sometimes be our crutch. But I think it's only because we have not really understood our own boundaries and how it makes us feel. Go back to what I said, you got to understand how it makes you feel, what triggers you. I think you need to know that in order to really know how to respond when someone disrespects that boundary. You can't always go to 10. All of us don't look cute in jail. All of us don't look cute going off on social media. And at some point, you got to realize anger should not be the first reaction. Maybe self-reflection is a better tool if someone does trigger in a bad way your boundary. It's okay to tell somebody, my sister, I love this, I'm stealing this from my sister, give me 50 feet. We've done a lot of that in the past couple of weeks, especially during this election season. We've said, I need 50 feet. And sometimes if the person doesn't walk away, you walk away. They don't hang up the phone, you hang up the phone. They come knocking at the door, hey, can we talk about this? You don't answer. So sometimes you may have to be the person to step back so that you can calm down and settle down and understand what happened, why it happened, and what you can do to keep from happening again. I really believe in my heart of hearts, out of all these conversations we've had, all these episodes we've done so far, I really believe that the most important, pivotal thing that we can remember is the communication piece of it, whether that be verbal or nonverbal. If you can't say it, write it down. Our body language. I can tell somebody has triggered for me from their body language. I get in trouble with my facial expressions. If someone triggers my boundaries, my face is going to tell it all before my mouth does. But everybody may not necessarily read my expression unless they're around me on a regular basis. So that's why it's important for me to say it verbally. You cross the boundary. Because everybody might not necessarily get it right off. And it's okay. But don't be nasty about it. Some of y'all got some nasty attitudes, okay? You got to check that. Because what I see a lot of times when people's boundaries get crossed, they'll want to go off when they see somebody cross theirs. But then when they cross someone else's, then they don't necessarily want to see it as serious, or they want to start an unnecessary argument. So what you want to receive, you got to be willing to give that, especially in a relationship. It cannot be one-sided. So if the person says to you, as an example, Let me just think of something simple. I don't know. I don't eat burgers. Don't keep coming to them saying, well, you ain't tried this burger. Have you tried this restaurant? Have you went over there and tried this restaurant? They've already told you they don't eat burgers. So why keep presenting them with different ways to eat a burger when they've been clear that they don't want it? I want to give you guys, from a mentoring standpoint, some practical examples, because a lot of these conversations, we have made them too hard and too uncomfortable to have and too scientific to have when it's just basic conversation. Now, how can you, some of y'all don't need to respond in some situations where your boundary has been crossed, not initially. Some of you guys need to be able to say, hey, listen, can you give me a couple days to think about this? Or can give me a couple days before you call me? Give me a couple days. It's okay to say that, because you don't want to respond in a way that's total contradictory. Like your heart can be feeling one day, like your heart can be one way, your mouth can be another way, and your head can be a whole nother different area. Don't respond when those three areas are out of whack, because you'll make the situation worse. And when you step away, I'm going to always encourage you, either pray and yell and scream and or write it down if you need to, and or call someone that you can talk to that can help you get back to where you need to be. Because there are a lot of you guys, your boundaries have you single. The way that you miscommunicated your boundaries, nobody wants to be around you. The way that you shut off the world when someone teeter-totters on your boundary is the reason why you're unhappy and you're upset and nobody wants to be in your space. Who wants to live like that? Who wants to be in a world isolated? Don't care what you say. You don't want to be in a world isolated, but you do want to make sure that people understand you are who you are. This is who I am, and give them the choice to decide if they want to be with you or not, especially when you're in a new relationship or you're establishing a new friendship. Both of those areas are very important. All right, y'all. So then what kind of strategies can be used to handle peer pressure when it conflicts with personal boundaries? Y'all, this can be a tough one, because when you think about peer pressure, you think about your friends, you think about societal norms, you think about, the communication you have online, you think about what you don't want people to say about you, what you don't want people to, write about you, put out there about you, whether it's truth or not truth. So sometimes these two areas can bump heads. But you got to remember that without regard to peer pressure, you have to make sure that you stand on your boundaries, because your boundaries are going to take you or not take you a whole lot further in life than the type peers that you have. Your peers can change every day, every week, every month. As you age, the same peers that you had in middle school, you might not have in high school, and vice versa. You might not have them when you go to college. You certainly might not have that same peer pressure as you become an adult. But your boundaries can potentially always be there. The boundaries that you set, whether good or bad, will more than likely follow you, because they're yours and you get the right to change them. When people come in your life, they come in your life for a reason, and sometimes for just a season. And so boundaries, though, again, good, bad, or the other, can carry on with you for a lifetime. And so make sure that you don't produce those boundaries based on the people that are in that season for that reason, for that short period of time. Because that means that you have placed your right, wrong, feelings, not feelings, around the group of people, whether it be on television, whether it be, in school, whether it be in the job, whatever that is, you have established things around individuals and not established those things for you. Remember, Boundaries are for us, about us, what makes us trigger, what taps our emotions. And so that's why you may want to definitely make sure when you're setting boundaries, again, don't set them around the people that you're around, but set them totally around you. And you can pray and ask, God, listen, show me what gets on my nerves. God, show me what I want people to say, do. It can be that simple. Don't make it too deep. You can pray to God just that simple and then get quiet. And I promise you, you're going to start seeing stuff happen over and over again. You can be like, that's that thing that get on my nerves. That's that thing I don't want to be bothered with. That's that, don't bring that. And then you'll know, and write it down. Y'all don't write down enough stuff, whether it be in a notebook, a journal, my phone. Listen, I have so many notes in my doggone telephone. I'm so glad we have something we can save them because I'll write it down. Okay, this got on my nerves. When they kept asking me the same question over and over again, this got on my nerves. That means that's a boundary. I don't want to answer that question no more. What I tell y'all, scary movies. I don't cross the line. Don't ask me about no scary movies. I've been like that my whole life. I ain't going to change it. That's a boundary. I don't like that in my eye gate. It's a boundary. All right. So just make sure that sometimes the boundaries that you set for yourself will conflict with peer pressure. But again, you want to always make sure you remember you're setting a boundary for your own personal space and not someone else's well-being. All right. And then how can parents and guardians support teens in establishing and maintaining healthy relationship boundaries? That's an easy answer. Talk about it. Communicate, share examples, share testimonies, share things with them, how someone crossed the boundary, and give them at each age group. Talk about what happened when you were in elementary school and, the teacher kept coming over to your desk asking you what were you doing. Teacher may have been getting too close. You might not, again, like I said, a lot of people don't like people in their space. Talk about a moment that happened in middle school. You were in the lunch cafeteria. You were eating pizza. Somebody kept asking you going to eat your pizza. Don't keep asking me. That's a boundary. I'm not giving you my pizza. Stop asking. Give them something that happened in high school. When you went out on a date. Like I mentioned, you may want to kind of communicate there. If I'm with my friends, you with your friends. Don't invite all of us together. I'm having girl time. You having guy time. That's a boundary. Get to college. Same thing. You go out to the club. You at the yard. You might not want to be around this sorority group or this, fraternity group or this. They keep showing up. You need to set boundaries, but share those with them. And then young people, don't be afraid to let your parents talk to you and share things with you. And some of y'all just be quiet. Even if listen, my mother will tell y'all to this day, and I'm 50 years old. She will share with y'all. She can tell just as good when I ain't paying her no attention, but I don't say anything and I sit there and listen to her. Some of y'all can practice that. It's not about being disrespectful or thinking you know it all, but everybody needs some wisdom at one time or another. And some of y'all can really benefit from going to sit around with some seniors because they can share some things with you guys. It's not about what you have or have not been through, but you never know what they can share with you to help you. So if a situation does present itself where it feels weird or uncomfortable about your boundaries, go back and you can think about a conversation or someone you can reach out to that you can talk to and help walk you through that thing. Because honestly, some of y'all walk around here too mad. Some of y'all got too many attitudes and you don't even realize it's a boundary that's been crossed. But then some of y'all won't humble yourselves enough to go talk or listen to someone. You're gonna be a senior one day and you're gonna hope and wish somebody would come and get the wisdom from you. Borrow that wisdom from those people while we still have them here on the earth. Because one thing is for sure, everybody is either going to be in a space where they're going to sometimes need someone to listen to them or they're going to need somebody to hear them. And that's how we grow again as a community. That's how we grow again as a family. And Lord knows for the next 4 years, we need each other in our communities to teach each other in our communities, especially with our young people, because we need to be in a space where we could potentially have a whole lot of boundaries that are going to be crossed. And we need to understand how to deal with that so that we won't find ourselves in a situation that we may not be able to get out of. All right, so I found this quote, guys. I love this quote. It says, above all else, now, y'all know I'm always going to get some faith-based because I want to encourage you. Above all else, guard your heart, guard your boundaries, for everything that you do flows from it. And that was Proverbs 4:23. And then I found a quote that said, boundaries, they are a form of self-care. They set the basic guidelines to how you want to be treated. They define your sense of self-respect and personal freedom. And so the most important thing that I want you to remember from this particular episode is it is okay for you to know what you like, what you don't like. It's okay for you to communicate to people what you like and what you don't like. It is okay for you to say those things. Hopefully, some of y'all are saying with love, but some of y'all I'm still praying about. But at least you're able to communicate it. And then know your audience. If you know that you have an audience that you can't communicate a certain way, then write them a note. Because again, some of y'all don't know how to talk to people because there's such a sensitivity in the atmosphere right now. You may have to find some different ways to communicate to people how not to disrespect or disregard your boundaries. But more importantly, adults, we've got to teach our teens, our young people, and our college students how to do it so that they can do it safely, they can do it respectfully, and they can learn how to communicate it to their peers and to others. Grandma, granddaddy, we need you in this season. Young people, you need the elders in this season. Listen to them. They have had so many boundaries that have been crossed, not just in relationships, but in the community, in the nation, in the state, in the world. And if you just listen to them, you can take some bits and pieces and some nuggets from what they say, and you can use it to do what you need to do to be your best you. This year, we are targeting being your best you, and we're targeting you to be able to communicate and to be able to learn how to be your best self before you go into a relationship or a friendship. And creating boundaries is going to be the number one way for you to do that. Y'all, I have really enjoyed y'all on this episode, and I hope that you have learned a lot, and I hope that you will share this information. More importantly, I hope that you will listen to one another. I hope that you'll have a roundtable discussion about this. And I hope that you will share some things with someone, even if that someone is your parents, when you thought they wouldn't listen. Parents, when the kids share, don't be judgmental. Just listen. And then let's start to learn from each other, y'all. All right, this is your host, author Monica Martin Fletcher, and I thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Monica Mentors. I will see you guys the next go around. Enjoy.